What is up, everybody? All right, so this is a live stream. So again, anybody in the future, you may want to skip forward like a minute or two because I'm just going to let people come in before we get into our subject, which is going to be about the Great Awakening. Again, I'm coming to you from my studio live here in Nashville, Tennessee. And I just want to make a video talking about the Great Awakening and everything that we're seeing happen upon the planet. And yeah, I see some people coming in. Also, as I like to always say, that these live streams are meant to be a conversation. So I want you guys to be giving me your questions and your thoughts so that we can actually talk to each other and that it's not just me talking into a camera. But with that being said, I think let's dive into the subject. Let me just make sure my chat window is open. Cool. I think my chats are up and going. So let's talk about it. So the Great Awakening. First of all, what is the Great Awakening? Well, as I said in my last live stream, we are in the apocalypse, but it's not what you think. The apocalypse is the lifting of the veil, the shining of the light upon the darkness. And so these end times that we are experiencing are the end times for the mind control matrix. And the matrix is breaking apart. It's crumbling left and right. And so the old soul is not at the end times. The old soul is at the beginning of the most important part of your journey. So the old soul has very important reasons for being here on the planet right now. And one of the most important things that an old soul has to offer is their wisdom, but specifically their calm vibration. Because it is exactly like the metaphor of being at the center of a tornado. If you're caught up in the edges of the tornado, it's incredibly violent. But if you are at the middle of that tornado, that vortex of energy, you are incredibly still and incredibly peaceful. And yet the vibration that you experience is very high. So, as an old soul, the most important thing that you can do right now is to stay centered and to be grounded. But I want to talk a little bit more about what we're seeing on the planet and how it can be really kind of disconcerting to an old soul, and yet there's really nothing to worry about. I see a bunch of new people coming in. First of all, hello everybody. And as I've already said once, I want this live stream to be a conversation. So please hit me with your comments so that we can actually have a dialogue back and forth. I don't want to just be talking into a camera this whole time. So what I'm seeing going on right now is an explosion of consciousness. And it's not necessarily laser focused. It's kind of this shotgun, throw all the spaghetti at the wall, explosion of social awareness. And people are having very wild emotional reactions. And in my opinion, not all of it is healthy. So it's important to recognize that I think when I look out at the social landscape, the average age of souls that I see becoming really active is mostly teenage souls, not necessarily old souls. They're not the youngest souls, but they're also not the most mature souls. And so because of that, they're getting incredibly wild and incredibly rowdy, and it has the potential to manifest as destruction and a forcing of change instead of a alignment with higher principle, and then therefore change happens as a byproduct. So it's kind of disconcerting to me to look out on the social landscape and see all of this fighting and frustration. And I wanted to just kind of make a video talking about that subject and reminding you that right now the most important thing is to not get caught up in that drama, because yes, social change is important, but there is a lot of drama going on at the same time. It's not just pure spiritual social change. It is definitely drama and dramatic and in some ways very negative. Of course, there's positive stuff that is coming during this time, but this is what I'm noticing. I'm really pulling myself off of Instagram. I'm trying to stay off of a lot of social media platforms in general because I notice two main things. One, when I'm on Instagram or even Reddit or other places that I just kind of browse social media, I notice that if I'm on there for longer than 5 or 10 minutes, my vibration really starts to get affected and I start to feel very negative. And I think that maintaining my positive vibration is the most important thing above even being informed. Because the truth is, just by having a cell phone, I'm going to be informed. I have people texting me, I get emails, I do see social media now and again, and so I am arguably an informed individual, and so are you. It's not impossible to be informed. But when I spend more than 5 or 6 minutes on social media these days and I tune into my heart, I start to see how my heart feels very heavy and I feel very weighted down. And I don't think that that is helpful to my spiritual journey. And I also think that it actually disempowers me because when my energy field is messed up and I am no longer in alignment, then that is when I notice especially that I don't think I can actually be helpful. So I maintain my energy field. There was a second thing that I was going to say about social media, but now I'm kind of blanking on what that was. So yeah, the main thing is just that to keep an awareness of how you spend your time and where you spend it. Maybe the second point I was going to make is that it's affecting my creativity. I have this amazing music studio and I make music all the time and I'm super grateful for having it. But I'm finding myself just kind of sitting on the couch, not feeling very inspired to live in my passion and to do what I love to do. And so I'm making a very big priority to monitor my social media time, to limit it, and to begin exercising my creativity again. And for me, another major way that I would like to exercise my creativity is by making videos. So that's why I'm here. I'm talking into a camera instead of just sitting and scrolling and passively wasting my time on social media. And so there's another thing that I want to talk to you about as an old soul, is this idea of awareness, which we've already kind of touched on. But when you are undergoing this process of awakening, it can be really easy to get caught up in some of these very triggering, dramatic, and fucked up things that we see in this world. So, for instance, there's no shortage of examples. You got everything from the Jeffrey Epstein situation to paying attention to vaccines, obviously paying attention to police brutality and systemic racism and all of these things. It's not that you shouldn't be aware of them. It's not that you should deny their reality. But I feel like touching into learning about these things needs to come with a certain sense of awareness too. You can't just spend all of your time focusing on the negative. It's the way that I like to see it is like, if you have the ability to change something, then you should change it. But if you have no ability to change something, just sitting and exposing yourself to that information may or may not help your awakening. And if the awakening is the most important thing, then you have to be aware of the vibration of how you spend your time. So don't just passively do this stuff. You need to actually tune into your heart space and continuously ask yourself how you feel. Because the old soul has a very important job to do. And it's important that you remember what your job is. Your job here as an old soul is to be an example of how to hold a peaceful vibration in the middle of a very chaotic world. Because this great awakening that we're experiencing is going to be, and obviously is, very chaotic. A lot of people are getting upended from their normal version of life. And so they're looking to places, in a way they need examples of how to integrate the chaos and confusion that they are experiencing. And so the old soul is here on the planet as an example of what that actually looks like. You are an example by the way you live, eat, breathe, and relate to people. You are an example of how to transcend the chaos of the world. The truth is that this world is very much an illusion. It's not to say that this world isn't real, but it's to say that this world is an illusion, much like a reflection in a mirror. The reflection inside the mirror is only there when you are looking at it. It's not there when you're not there. And so the only real thing is you. And so this world becomes a reflection perfectly based on your vibration. And so as an old soul, it's important to remember that so that you can remember how to maintain your vibration in order to affect the reflection that you see. So for instance, in times of chaos, not everybody experiences chaos. It's important to remember that. In these times of uncertainty, there are plenty of people that still feel certainty. And in these times of unrest, there's plenty of people that still feel peace. All right, I see a message coming in. Thank you for being here. Your message has helped me see a clearer message. Thank you. I'm grateful for that comment. And look, this time is very interesting. And so back to the idea of reflection, you must remember that this world responds to your vibration, to your thoughts, to your energy, more than more than the physical parts of nature. The physical side of nature is very much reactive to the energetic state that you hold. And there's something, when I was studying yoga philosophy, and I did a 200-hour yoga teacher training, there was this amazing part of the conversation in yoga philosophy where they talk about the siddhis. And the siddhis, which is, I think it's spelled S-I-D-I, that spelling could be slightly wrong, but the word is siddhi. And the conversation about that is these kind of supernatural powers that a yoga practitioner starts to experience when they progress to a certain point of the yogic path. Now, some of the conversation around these siddhis is very fascinating, but it's also something not to get caught up in. But for example, one of these supernatural changes that a yogic practitioner probably will experience along their path is that negativity can only come so close, and it cannot actually touch them. It cannot actually affect their lives. They may see it out in their surroundings, but it does not impact them. And so I'd like to dive into that. Why is that? Why is it that someone who practices yoga could get to a certain place energetically that negativity cannot approach them? And the way I see it in my mind is like, imagine if you're in a crowded room, and there's negativity happening all over, it would never actually penetrate your personal space. So it's not that you are unaware of the negativity in the world, but it's that it doesn't affect you. Now, the mechanism behind that, I believe, fully comes down to the heart space and the energy of the heart space that you hold, because you are a walking, living, breathing magnet. And every thought that you program your vibration with extends out into the energy field around you. And so very much like a magnet, there is the law of attraction and the law of repulsion. The law of attraction is very obvious. That which you are in alignment with comes right into your reality and you interact with. But the law of repulsion is anything that you are not in alignment with can't touch you. It's exactly like if you're to take two magnets and hold their poles in the opposite way, they don't want to touch each other. They begin to fight and make tension to not actually interact. And then if they were left to their own devices, they would be completely repelled away. And that is what happens with your heart space energy. When you are living in alignment with these higher principles of love, peace, compassion, empathy, true tolerance, and become a being for truth itself, everything that is not in alignment with that begins to be repelled from your reality. And so I was talking to my girlfriend yesterday, and there's a part of our conversation that I want to share with you. And it was the idea that she is feeling all of this intuition, all of this innate wisdom about the world that she sees. And yet she's looking to her friends to kind of be on the same page. And not all of her friends are seeing it the same way. And so my reaction to her was, well, the exciting thing about what's happening in her journey is that her spirit guides are honoring her higher self and are removing her crutches to finally stand in her truth and to depend only on spirit as the source of her knowledge and wisdom. Spirit will always tell you, in the sense of resonance, you'll feel it in your heart center. Spirit will always tell you when you have touched upon truth. And the second thing that happens after that, though, is that because we are social beings, we like to verify that truth. And so we verify it by trying to talk to friends or talk to family. But then sometimes, because not everybody is at the same part of the path as you, your friends and family don't necessarily validate or corroborate the intuition and wisdom that you feel. So then the question becomes, well, what do you now do? Do you doubt yourself? Do you doubt what Spirit has been teaching you simply because other people are not validating it? Or do you choose to lean into your connection with Spirit? And so back to the idea of the law of repulsion, sometimes when you stand firmly for truth and you listen firmly to the voice of Spirit, you will experience other people getting angry with you or doubting you or calling you names or calling you stupid, really just pushing back upon that vibration. And that's simply because those people are not quite in alignment yet of standing firmly upon truth and listening to the voice of Spirit within them. So it's important that you see that interaction as something that is wonderfully designed for your spiritual growth, because what an awesome opportunity to finally learn that you can stand firmly with Spirit. And so you don't always need external validation. And if you're seeking external validation, I would ask you to go into your heart and see why. What part of your shadow self needs this external validation? Because the only voice that you should be seeking any sort of guidance from is the voice of Spirit, the voice within your heart. It's in the tiny heart space. And it's most times just a feeling or a whisper. So I'm going to ask you guys a direct question. The chat box has been a little bit quiet. I want you guys to ask me questions or give me some feedback. How do you, this is a question for you, how do you feel, sense, or hear the voice of Spirit? What is one way that you personally feel or sense the voice of Spirit in your life? And while these questions come in, I'll tell you how I feel it. It's oftentimes, I can only associate it with intuition. It's a kind of knowing that comes into my awareness. It can be a feeling, it can be a knowing. It can also come in through the angle of synchronicity and things that just happen in my life. They happen in a way that shows me that Spirit is paying attention and Spirit is listening. I see one comment that's come in. Thanks, Tan's Dreamer, for your comment. He says, dreams, intuition, and synchronicity. Totally. I've had a lot of dreams as well that have become messages to me or reminders to me and have guided me during certain phases of my life. Intuition and synchronicity I've already touched on, and that's incredibly true. Um, Oftentimes, I think we forget that we can put out questions or we can put out requests into the universe, and we do this through prayer. I think that prayer is one of the most important spiritual tools that we have at our disposal that we need to interact with more, because prayer is actually putting us into a position of conversation and friendship with spirit. And then when you put something out in prayer, and then when that prayer is over, you don the stance of faith, knowing that your prayer has been heard, and then you go about your life looking for the evidence of that prayer being answered. And then you will see it. And I'll come back and share you several stories about how prayer has impacted me on my journey, but I want to read some of these comments. So Courtney says, "What a powerful conversation. Can we just listen to our friends and not disagree with what they say? But," hold on, my comments keep disappearing. There it is. "Can we just listen to our friends and not disagree with what they say, but accept it for what it is? Amazing. I'm codependent and I look forward to asking myself why." Yeah, let's talk about that codependency for a second. And then Tanya, I see a comment from you I'll read in a second. So codependency. I have been very codependent in this lifetime, and I've learned how to deal with it. The first thing I want to give you is a very powerful book. It's called Codependent No More. Codependent No More. Look up that book. It's incredibly powerful, and it talks about these power dynamics between addict types, who are usually narcissistic, and the shadow of that, which is codependency. And codependency is kind of this need to control other people, to control an addict or to control a narcissist. And at the surface level, the codependent says, well, I just want to help. But the second level down, you see that the codependent is actually wanting to control. And then beneath the need to control almost always exists this emotion of resentment and bitterness. And so the best thing that a codependent can do is to actually stop engaging completely, stop engaging with any sort of narcissist or addict, because engaging with them only perpetuates that cycle. And so true empowerment and true transcendence of codependency is where you come back to your center. Once again, the theme that I keep talking about is coming back to your center. A codependent comes back to their center and no longer enables the people around them. And that breaks the dynamic. And you will experience tension as you attempt to do that, because the narcissist or the addict will push harder for you to stay codependent. But that is just a sign that you're actually changing your vibration. So there's more I could say, but let's get back to these comments. Tanya said, mine are basically that as well. Synchronicities, intuition, and just an inner knowing. I don't recall dreams much recently. I've had bits and pieces of them. Yeah, and that's okay. You know, some dreams are vivid and some dreams aren't. But one thing you could do would be to start a dream journal. I've done this for quite a while. I've kind of fell out of this practice recently, but I just kept it in my phone, and when I would wake up, before I would do anything, especially before going on social media or sometimes even engaging in conversation, I would put myself in the dream space that I was in, and I would journal that out. And that practice over time helps you have more vivid dreams, helps you to recall your dreams more, and kind of trains that muscle of learning how to remember your dreams and how to become lucid in dreams. Because dreams are packed full of symbolism. And I don't believe that dreams are happening in our brains. I believe that our awareness, our spirit, is basically in the astral dimension. And we are experiencing everything from what our shadow wants us to address, what our spirit guides are trying to help us with. Um, so dreams are very important to pay attention to because the lessons that we can learn from our dreams is very important. More comments. Courtney said, I hear it as my own voice in my head. I feel it by just knowing as well. And yes, so many synchronicities. My dreams also seem mostly silent these days. Any insight? Um, the only insight I think I could give you would be to ask your spirit guides if there's some sort of lesson that you need to learn inside of that silence. Um, Basically, Courtney says, yes, this is already taking place. I'm going to read that book. Thank you so much. Yeah, definitely check out Codependent No More. That book is amazing. But back to your thing about dreams, and your dreams are always packed full of meaning. It is one way that I believe our soul attempts to garnish more meaning than we can get in the physical world, because your soul is much larger than the physical world itself. And so this dimension of dreams in the astral realm where thoughts manifest quickly, it's a perfect reflection of what's going on in your thought sphere. But you can interact with it. It's not just a kind of static thing or a passive thing. Learning to become lucid in dreams is a really important tool. I'm not perfect at that at all, but I've had many, many lucid dreams in my journey. But one way that you can interact with it is through your intention. So as you're going to sleep, what you're thinking about in those final moments of your day is how you're setting intention towards the dream space. If you're in those final moments with your head rested on your pillow and you're just thinking about the frustration going on in the world, or the crazy shit that's happened in your day, or the regrets that you have in your past, all of those are intentions that then go into the dream world with you and then manifest on the screen of your dreams. So you can actually take control of this moment as you're going to sleep and program the intentions that you want your dreams to interact with. So back to your exact question of any insight on the fact that you're having silent dreams, put that as an intention when your head is on your pillow and you're going into dreamland. Ask your spirit guides, what am I supposed to be learning? What do I need to see? Say, Spirit, I am open to the lesson. Please show me what it is that you want me to know. Give me the guidance that I need right now, today on my journey. And they will respond to that. And then write down your dream, because even if it seems random and weird, write it down, because over time you may gain new insight about what that dream was. And so it's important to remember all of the fine details that you can about that dream. More comments are coming in. Tanya says, I had a weird dream where I went to go into my house. I sleep in a camper in my yard, but I rent a house. But in the dream, I had left the camper to go in the house, and I approached the house. An invisible force bust through the door, knocking me to the ground. But once I hit the ground, I couldn't speak. I was calling out for my husband. He nudges me and says, I'm hollering in my sleep. Yeah, totally. Did he hear me in the dream world or in the real world? The invisible force felt like a large wolf-like creature, something strong and powerful. Okay, thank you for all of that sharing, first of all, Tanya. So let's look at some of those symbols that you experienced. First of all, this force, this very powerful force, like a wolf, you say. The first thing to recognize is that this is a reflection of you. Also, before I get into any dream interpretation, I always start these conversations by saying this is my interpretation, but you are the only one that knows how to interpret your dream. So I'll offer you my reflection, but whatever resonates with you, you can explore. Whatever doesn't resonate, don't explore. Okay, but Your dream is a reflection of you. And so this wolf-like character that's demanding your attention, forcing you to the ground and removing your ability to speak, is probably a part of you, a part of your own consciousness, a shadow part of you that is demanding your attention. And your conscious mind in your waking world is probably not engaging your attention with what it should be, in the sense of whatever this dream is attempting to get you to wake up to pay attention to. The reason it's doing it so dramatically in your dream space is because it's something in your life that you know you should be paying attention to, but you aren't. And it maybe there's something connected to the idea of speech and speaking up. Maybe you're talking too much, but you're not saying the things that really matter. Maybe you're talking too much, but you're not speaking your truth, or you're not speaking from the heart. And so maybe this dream is shaking your consciousness a little bit to get you to stop speaking and to pay attention. So I would explore that. And again, use your last moments of your day when your head is on your pillow going into another dream. Ask your spirit guides to show more meaning, to give you more meaning on what this message is. Put a prompt out there with the form of intention as you're going to sleep, so that you can try to gain more meaning on what the dream is. The last thing I wanted to say about your dream, you saying, your husband heard you in the real world and stuff. I mean, this happens to me all the time too. When I experience dreams that kind of evoke an emotion of anxiety, I will either wake myself up from kind of moaning or screaming. I don't really scream, but kind of like trying to vocalize. Sometimes I'll wake myself up and I'll hear that I've been doing that, or my girlfriend will kind of nudge me and be like, "Babe, are you okay? You're kind of moaning and stuff." And I think that that's natural, because your body is having a reaction as your spirit is also having a reaction. So I wouldn't be worried about it. But again, everything in dreams that evokes this type of anxiety from you is not a reflection of some sort of entity or like demon or shadow or whatever that's trying to fuck with you. It is your own mind. It's a part of your own mind that is trying to demand your attention, and that needs to be healed and needs to be integrated. So don't be afraid of it, but become curious. Become curious about the symbols and ask your higher self to give you some more insight on the purpose of that dream. Courtney says, wow, I used to do that as a child. Before I would fall asleep, I would tell myself what I was going to dream about. I forgot all about that. OnenO, I am so happy the journey brought me here. I'm happy you're here too. And yeah, you can interact with these dreams. It is your consciousness projected into what appears to be a three-dimensional reality. So your intentions are made manifest, and all of your consciousness is populating that dream space. So it's a perfect reflection of what is going on in you, and you can use it as a tool to gain more insight. Tanya says, wow, I do have a problem with speaking up or out because I don't like conflict. And I do speak out on a few things that I feel people need to hear. My throat chakra is weak, and I have a low voice and almost loose sound at times while speaking. Yeah. Well, that's great. The cool thing about that is that now you know where your work is. If you are feeling blocked in the throat chakra, one thing you can do to help work with these energies is wear the color blue. The color blue is associated with the throat chakra. It gives your subconscious mind a kind of reminder that you want to work with your throat chakra. Another thing I would do is to ramp up the clearing of your throat chakra. You can do things that activate how do I say this? Like, you can journal as a way of practicing how to speak. reading and journaling helps evolve our language. And so then when you do need to use your voice, you can pull from that part of your brain that has been making all of these neural pathway connections on how to communicate. When you write your thoughts down in a journal, it helps organize your thoughts. And so then not only in the future can you pull from what you've written in a journal, but it also practices the muscle of communication. Another thing there is to go into your heart space and meditate on the idea that your truth and the truth that is within you, that comes from spirit within you, is the most important thing that you should always live in alignment with. And so there's this idea of fear and courage. Fear is the paralyzing side. Obviously, we all know what fear is. It keeps us, it prevents us from doing the things that we want to do. Courage is choosing to move beyond it in the face of fear. Hey, Matt, thanks for the comment. I'll read it in a second. So courage actually only exists when you are feeling fear. To be courageous means that fear is here and you are choosing to move beyond it. So if you experience fear and your throat chakra is closing and you feel like you don't know what to say and you don't know how to communicate, then you are being given the perfect opportunity to become courageous, to embody the warrior within you. And by embodying the warrior and becoming courageous, if you take even one step towards communicating, you're breaking the energy of that fear. You're breaking the energy of that darkness within you. And then you will gain momentum. Yeah, I notice this even anytime I get on camera. In the beginning, I'm always kind of unsure of what I want to talk about, or like the flow feels a little bit awkward. But then over time, I finally land in that zone where I can clearly communicate and kind of keep my stream of consciousness going. So think about it in terms of momentum. Sometimes you just need to start your communication and just keep it going long enough where then eventually you'll feel in the flow with that. But yeah, if you're saying throat chakra feels blocked, there's a inability to communicate yourself, and then you pair that with the dream that you shared with me about the wolf kind of knocking you to the ground. I mean, the wolf, I think, I would see the wolf as a symbol of a powerful animal that is here to speak truth. Maybe that's what that animal guide is or could be for you in your dream, if you resonate with that idea. But maybe the wolf is kind of symbolizing this ferocious beast that is the truth and is showing you how powerful that truth is, and forcing you to shut up, forcing you to recognize its power. And so when you live in alignment with that truth, that is really where you begin to feel that power, and your communication will become more free-flowing. Yeah. Let me see. Matt says, hey, OnenO, just an update. My bead shop business was safe from looting last week at work now, so may have to watch the replay, but wanted to say thanks and keep being a guiding light for us old souls. Matt, that's so awesome. I'm so happy to hear that. And I actually had a friend of mine reach out to me after they watched my live stream, and they were also curious about what would happen with your bead shop. And man, I'm so happy to hear that, because I believe in the power of prayer. And for those of you that were on that last live stream, I prayed for Matt's bead shop, and I just offered his worries up to Spirit and prayed for protection over his business. And so Matt, thank you so much for following through with that and for letting me know that you haven't been looted and you haven't been hurt or harmed by that. So that's an incredible answer to prayer. Tanya says, thank you so much. It makes much sense. I rarely wear blue, but I will be doing so now. Yeah. And just, find whatever works for you. There's plenty of videos on YouTube that you could research about how to clear the throat chakra. But really, the awareness of the throat chakra is that it comes down to speaking truth and speaking up for spirit and speaking your heart. That is what it means to have a clear throat chakra, is that you're able to speak from your heart and channel the spirit that is within you into the external world. Tan's Dreamer says, this strange cluster of synchronicities within very vivid symbols of snakes, ancient Medusa, and caduceus brought me here. What are your thoughts on their meaning and manifestation? Okay, so you're wanting to know the meaning of snakes, Medusa, and the caduceus. First of all, I don't really think I know too much about Medusa, but I'll try my best. But snakes and the caduceus, those actually go very much together. Later, when this live stream is done, go back onto my channel and find my video about the caduceus, because I actually have like a 7 or 8 minute video that really breaks down my thoughts on the caduceus. But essentially that symbol, and for those of you that aren't familiar with the symbol of the caduceus, it's what we kind of associate with the symbol for hospitals. It's got the long staff and the 2 snakes that go around it up to the top. And when you see old classic symbols of the caduceus, at the top there are wings that are sprouted. So it's a rod with the snakes that come together to a point, and then wings are sprouted off of this. So there is a lot to unpack here. I'll try to do it quickly. First of all, the 2 snakes represent the 2 poles of your consciousness, essentially the masculine, the feminine, or the positive, the negative, the yin, the yang, and in the yoga terminology, we call that Ida and Pingala. And so they go around each other up the main pole, and the main pole in yoga terminology is called the Sushumna. The Sushumna is your central pole. It's the central flow of energy. Some people call it the prana tube. It's the central pole of energy that only becomes active when your chakras are in balance. So you balance your chakras, which is what the snakes are symbolizing, the perfect balancing of each chakra, then activates the central pole, your Sushumna, your prana tube, and then out sprouts the feathers and the wings. Now the wings and the snake have a very very interesting symbolism when they're connected to each other. You could also look up my other video on my channel called Kukulkan and the caduceus. It's something about that. It's about the snake feather symbolism, and my thumbnail image is me standing in front of the pyramids of Chichen Itza in Mexico. But the idea of the snake having wings in symbolism talks about your earthly nature having transcended into the angelic realm. So your earthly nature is symbolized by the snake. The snake only exists on the earth. Its whole life, it just crawls on its belly on the earth. So it is usually used as a symbol to talk about the physical plane. Now, when you see a snake that then has sprouted wings, that is describing transcending the earthly nature, because it's no longer just a snake. It has wings, which means it can fly up into the ethers, up into the astral, up into the spirit dimension. So that is kind of how I would break down the caduceus. Another thing I would break down about snake symbolism is that in Western culture, we have fear of snake symbolism, mostly because of the Bible story and the Garden of Eden and how the snake has symbolized the devil. But in other cultures, for instance, yoga philosophy and Hinduism, they actually symbolize the snake as a symbol of transformation, because like essentially we would see it through the symbol of the butterfly. The butterfly starts out as a little caterpillar, very much like a snake, goes into the cocoon, completely, its whole world ends. And when it's at the end of what it thinks, where death is, next thing you know, it reshapes itself into a new creature that now has wings. It emerges from the cocoon, spreads its wings, and now spends its life in the sky. So it used to spend its life on the ground, now it spends its life in the sky. That's the symbol of transformation with the butterfly. So with the snake, the symbol of transformation that these Eastern mythologies use is that it sheds its skin. It is never the same being. It is always evolving into a new form. And so it's a very different connotation than, Western Christian mythology. The Eastern view on the snake is that it is a principle for manifestation, a principle for evolving. Yeah, so there's that. Let's go back to the comments. There's been a few more come in. Also, I guess to touch on the Medusa, I don't really know too much about Medusa symbolism, other than, I know that we can paralyze people when we shoot negativity out of our eyes, and it can be a paralyzing thing, and people can turn to stone. So maybe it's a symbol of kind of a warning about negativity that we also have access to. Just because we know that there's negativity doesn't mean that we need to engage with it or to choose to manifest it. But some of these stories are just showing you what negativity is capable of. So maybe that's how I would interpret it, but I don't know that I would really be an expert on Medusa symbolism. Let's see. A user named No Problem says, have you ever had a dream with a shadow being with a top hat and red eyes? I interpret as a demon or devil. I feel like someone tried to send a malevolent force to me. Well, no, first of all, I haven't had that dream. But again, I don't know if you were here earlier in our conversation. I would offer this up to your spirit guides. I don't believe that negative, demonic beings have power over you, but they certainly have the ability to shake you when you are not living in alignment with your higher principles, with the higher self. When you're not living fully in alignment with spirit, then your energy field is weakened and darkness comes in much easier at that point. But again, in the dream world, instead of seeing it as an objective demon, like some other entity out there that is able to fuck with you, try to analyze it from the perspective that you are the creator of the dream world. So everything in the dream world is a reflection of your consciousness. So then you should go, much like we've been doing throughout this live stream, you should go into the dream as if you're a researcher looking at the symbols and see if you can find the meaning of why this entity showed up in your dream, or what appears to be an entity. Because most likely it's a part of your own shadow that is attempting to get your attention. So if you need help with that, as I said earlier in this live stream, when you lay your head on your pillow and you're about to go into the dream world, engage yourself in a conversation with your spirit guides and ask them to come into your dream world to show you the meaning of that dream, or to show you the meaning that you need to see in order to evolve on your next step of your journey. Okay, more comments. We got somebody named B&B says, can you explain this description? Paradise is surrounded by hardships and the fire is surrounded by desires. Maybe give me another comment, because I really don't know what you're trying to say. I don't really understand that, so I don't really know how to interpret that. Jenny Miko says, perfect, you are correct. Courtney says, working on breath work, there are so many techniques. Can you recommend a beginner technique? Yeah, totally. I'll give you one or two, maybe three of my favorite, what I consider beginner techniques, but they shouldn't be looked down on because I still use them. I've been practicing them for maybe 6 or 7 years now. The first one is the counted breath. So when you breathe in, you want to count to, usually I do this where you count shorter on the breath in and longer on the breath out. So let's say you breathe in to the count of 4, and then you breathe out to the count of 8. and then you breathe into the count of 4, and you breathe out to the count of 8. And then the way you should practice that is set your timer and choose like 7 minutes. I think that's a good number. And for those 7 minutes, all you're trying to do with your mind is keep focused on the counting, breathing into the count of 4 and breathing out to the count of 8. That is a very, very powerful breath technique because it slows down your breathing. It slows down your diaphragm. And when your diaphragm is fully relaxed and breathing slowly, it triggers the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the opposite of fight or flight. So it calms you down and it begins to create mind-heart coherence, which is very powerful. So that simple technique can do it. Another technique that I really like to use, which can be kind of challenging for people, but it's really only challenging when your mind is in kind of a chaotic place, but it also helps to get you out of a chaotic mind space, is what's called Nadi Shodhana. Nadi Shodhana. And I actually teach this in a guided meditation here on my channel. I don't know if you guys know this, but I have over 50 or 60 guided meditations here on my channel. You can search my channel with the hashtag Meditation Monday, and you'll find all of my meditations. And so I teach this one technique called Nadi Shodhana. What that is it's called alternate nostril breathing. So you basically plug your right nostril and you breathe in through the left, and then you plug your left and you breathe out through the right. And then you reverse. You breathe in through the right nostril, you plug the other way, and you breathe out through the left. So it's this kind of in-out alternating nostril breath, okay? Now, there are forms of visualizations that you can do, that you can use to help you stay focused on that breath. But if you just do that breath technique, again, for 5 or 7 minutes, you will notice how your energy will begin to shift. Now, if you feel any sort of discomfort or anxiety while doing this, it's always important to practice these techniques with awareness. So you don't want to push yourself. You don't want to be like a boot camp instructor. You know, you don't want to force yourself into peace. That never works. But there is also this balance of sometimes we feel discomfort and we do need to push ourselves through the discomfort in order to transcend it. And so it's going to come down to your awareness. If you are really feeling anxious by practicing any of this stuff, then maybe it's best to slow down and practice with somebody, because then they can guide you through that. Or on the other side of that awareness, maybe you're feeling this anxiousness that's coming up only because your ego doesn't want to let go. Your ego is frustrated with the fact that you're trying to generate peace. And so if that's the case, then keep going, keep practicing, and then you will eventually break through and you will feel a deep sense of relief and peace. And so, yeah, I saw another comment. That's what I'm talking about is pranayama, breath control. That's the yoga word for breath control, is pranayama. And I have a lot of guided meditations that are focused on pranayama here on my channel. So definitely go through there and find one that resonates with you. Let's see. Talon says, what is your opinion about Jainism or Zoroastrian? Can you hear me now? And is my voice back? Yeah, you can hear me? Okay, good. Yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for the heads up. Yeah, I got a notification on my phone and it killed my microphone for some reason. So I was answering about the question of Zoroastrianism or Jainism, and I don't really think I'm incredibly knowledgeable on those subjects, so I don't really think that I have much to say. But I think that what I've seen about Zoroastrianism at least seems positive. But you know, I'm kind of gonna refrain from saying anything because I don't really know much about it. My path has really taken me down the yoga path, and then my old soul nature has exposed me to a lot of stuff, but I really only try to speak about things that I resonate with, that I actually feel in my heart. So, yeah. One other thing that I did want to talk about in this live stream before we get off here, and again, please leave more comments. I love talking to you guys. But another thing that I wanted to express, well, before I do that, Courtney says, new to your channel, I will explore meditation Monday. Thank you for these techniques. Can't wait to practice. Awesome. And then Tanya says, which meditation techniques you mostly use and which ones you don't? Okay, I'll go into that. I do like those breath techniques that I laid out, the counting breath and then the Nadi Shodhana breath. I also do some visualization techniques where I'll envision like a ball of, well, it starts with a feeling. So this is actually my number one meditation technique that I like to use. And I learned this from Drunvalo Melchizedek, for those of you that are aware of him. I did his course, which is called Awakening Your Illuminated Heart. And this meditation is a very, very powerful meditation to bring you into perfect balance. So what you do is you sit in meditation, you begin to just become focused on your present moment. You go into your heart space, and then you begin to generate a feeling of gratitude, and you envision that feeling of gratitude like a ball of light right inside the middle of your chest. And you're going to be interacting with earth first and then sky second. So think, when you're thinking about the earth, think of all of the ways that you have been physically provided for that make you happy and that you're grateful for. And you're trying to generate a sense of gratitude right in the center of your chest. And then once that is fully there and you can feel it and see this ball of energy, you then send it down your spine all the way to the core of the earth. You're sending that ball of gratitude energy all the way down into the core of the earth. And then you wait. And then a moment or so later, you will feel Mother Earth send her energy back to you. And then you accept that energy right into your heart space. That's the first part. The second part is interacting in the same way with Father Sky. So you, once again, go to your heart space, generate a feeling of gratitude and envision it as a ball of light in your chest. And you're becoming grateful for all of the non-physical ways that you have been provided for. So an example of that could be synchronicities that have come into your life, emotions or energies that have been generated within you that make you happy, situations that have taken place in your life that are beyond your control. Those are examples of how the non-physical helps you. And so after you have generated that feeling and you see that ball of light in your chest, you can then send it up to Father Sky above, directly out your crown chakra, straight above, and then you wait. And then a moment or so later, you will feel Father Sky return that energy and you accept it into your heart space. And then you sit and you breathe, feeling your connection going up and down to Father Sky and Mother Earth and how it's coming back and merging in your heart center. And then the final step of this meditation is to remember that you are the divine child. You are part of that Holy Trinity. You are the divine child of Mother Earth and Father Sky. And that is your true identity. You are the merging together of these two energies. And so that meditation technique is very, very powerful. I learned that through Drunvalo Melchizedek. He has it in some of his books, but I learned it at a course that he put together called Awakening Your Illuminated Heart. And if you guys aren't familiar with that, if you're an old soul and you resonate with the meditation technique I just laid out, I would highly recommend that you look into Drunvalo Melchizedek, as well as look up his School of Remembering. That School of Remembering is his school online where he trains all of these teachers to go out and teach what's called the Awakening the Illuminated Heart workshop. And it's a very, very powerful workshop, specifically designed to get you to remember and reawaken your Merkaba energy field. And it was incredibly powerful for me. I'll wait for some more comments to come in, but I'll share one more story about that. When I actually did that weekend and I awakened my Merkaba, I love these type of synchronicities. So I went through this 3-day weekend course that was all about awakening your Merkaba. And then also, for those of you that don't know, the Merkaba is this shape. And this tattoo that I have is specifically a diagram of you would be at the center of this. Your Merkaba is around you, but it extends far beyond your physical body. But for the purposes of this story, this triangular shape is symbolized as the Merkaba. So when I was going through this course and I awakened my Merkaba and remembered my Merkaba, my sister and my mom happened to be in Sedona, Arizona. And it was so funny that at this exact time, my sister was out in Sedona. She came back and she bought me a Merkaba crystal and turned it into a necklace. And she's never bought me anything like that before. You know, it's just one of these perfect synchronicities. And she got it from Sedona. It's like one of the coolest things. And so the weekend I was in LA, I was living there at the time, but during that weekend in LA, I was awakening my Merkaba. My sister and my mom were out in Sedona, Arizona. She bought me a Merkaba crystal and gifted it to me when she came back home from her trip. And I love synchronicities like that. I just think it's so cool when stuff like that happens. There's been a few more comments. Let's see. Courtney says, I can't wait to use that meditation. Everyone here on this channel has helped me today. Thank you all. Thank you, OnenO. I'm left amazed. That's awesome. Thank you for interacting and for putting yourself out there in the chat room. Easy Faith wants to know, Yarak, you eat this? It's Turkish meat. No, I don't. I haven't ever eaten that. And also I'm vegetarian. So I probably wouldn't eat it anyway. But no judgment. It sounds tasty. Let's see. Talon wants me to block Faith. Well, we'll see. If they get, I'm not against blocking trolls, but I don't know if he's officially a troll yet, but we'll see. Courtney says, your thoughts on fasting. Okay, fasting is a very awesome subject. Fasting, essentially, I think that fasting should be used with prayer. There's this whole idea of intermittent fasting, and that's cool. Again, no judgment. I know that it helps people a lot. So it can be very, very healthy for you. So there's this kind of reductionist scientific view that fasting is healthy, and that's cool. But that's not where I come from. I come from the idea of fasting as being a very powerful spiritual tool that when used with prayer, is something that is very, very powerful and can be very transformative. So when I was younger, I grew up in the church, and we did, the first experience I had with fasting was a 30-hour fast, and we did this in middle school. And our whole middle school age youth group got together in church, and we did this 30-hour fast together. And on one of these days, we did a canned food drive in the neighborhood, and we would go house to house and collect food that then later in the day we donated to homeless shelters. And it was a very, very transformative and powerful experience. But there's one fasting story that I think you would find very interesting. When I was in Los Angeles, and I had just moved there. I was there about 7 months, 6 or 7 months, and I was able to get into these auditions and start auditioning for really major artists. And so I got this one audition, auditioning for Gwen Stefani. And I was like 19 at the time, and I really wanted that gig. And so I put my all into learning those 3 songs, and I showed up to the audition. I was one of the youngest people there. And out of like 30 or 40 keyboard players, I made it down to the final 5 that they were going to choose from. And so it took about another week or 2, and then eventually they decided to go with somebody else. It wasn't me. And I was really upset. And I felt confused because I was like, God, you've been preparing me to be a musician my whole life. I just want to go out and use my talents in the professional world. I feel like this opportunity should have been mine. So what's up? And that's where my heart was. And so I decided to fast. And I actually fasted, I think, for 2 full days. I think I ate food again on the 3rd day. And so it was about not quite a 72-hour fast, but somewhere around there. And during this time, I spent a lot of time in prayer. So I was fasting and I was praying. And what I was praying for was, God, I know that you've given me my musical talents, and I want to use them to the best of my ability to honor you and to be able to become a professional in the industry. And that's where my heart was. And so I was spending time in prayer with that as my prayer, and I was fasting. And then I finished my fast on the 3rd day. And then about a few days later, I get a phone call from somebody I've never talked to before, and they say, hey, I'm calling because I work with this artist, Liz Phair. And for those of you that don't know, she was a really popular artist in the 90s and the early 2000s. And this story takes place in the early 2000s. And he says, we want you to come down and audition to go on tour with us. Our keyboard player in Liz Phair's band just got hired to work with Gwen Stefani. So we're taking the callbacks, the other 4 people that didn't get the Gwen Stefani gig, and we're going to audition them. And you're one of them, so we want you to come down and audition. And so I go down and I audition, and then I got that gig, and then that was my very first professional gig. And then within a matter of a week or 2, I was out on tour. I played on the Jay Leno show, the Ellen DeGeneres show. We did a filming for an episode of WB's Charmed. And then we got on a tour bus, and that was my first professional tour where we hit all of America and Canada over about 4 or 5 months. And it was such a dream come true. And so I love telling that story because it's an example of how prayer and fasting can be used together to really communicate with Spirit, and that Spirit honors us and listens to us. And when you take a very large stance of, I am not going to be eating, I'm going to be spending my time praying, and also, even if I'm not in prayer, my heart is going to maintain the intention of prayer. I think that it has very, very transformative and powerful effects on your life. And Spirit really listens and really reacts to that amount of intention. So it's a powerful technique. So yeah, that's my thoughts on fasting. I think intermittent fasting and things like that is cool. Like, I'm not going to talk shit on it, but I come from the perspective that fasting should be something that you do in tandem with prayer. And so fasting and prayer, in my mind, kind of go hand in hand. I saw a few more comments. Courtney says, wow, the power of prayer, the fasting almost seem to enhance it. Exactly. They go hand in hand. And then Talon says, you are more connected with Hinduism than Buddhism, right? I wouldn't say so. No. I don't, as an old soul, I am much more interested in truth. And I have found truth inside Hinduism, Buddhism, yoga philosophy, Christianity, Um, when I really look at mythological stories and the wisdom that they're attempting to impose, or what's that word? Depart. I always just come back to my heart center. So to me, I don't align myself with one thing. I align myself with spirit, and I choose that word on purpose because it is an undefinable, ever-present reality, which usually we call God, but God has so many weird connotations. When I say that word, it evokes all of these things in you that I don't really mean to evoke. So what I mean is spirit or creator. And in fact, years ago, in about esoteric Christianity brought me to your channel. Awesome. Yeah, because I find the Christ story to be incredibly powerful. And yet, I grew up in the church. I spent the first 20 years of my life in the church and then experienced the hypocrisy of the church when my dad came out of the closet as a gay man. He was a pastor in the church, and the whole church community shunned him and my family. And it was very traumatic and very, very strange to be shunned by the people that basically helped me grow up. So I've always seen that there's a difference between the teachings of Christ and the way that the church practices those teachings. So I resonate with the teachings of Christ, but I also see how the teachings of Christ are very much in alignment with the teachings of the Buddha or the things that I've learned in yoga philosophy. It doesn't conflict. Christ was here to liberate us. Christ was here to say that you can be just like me. There is no separation in the philosophy of Christ between him being up here and us being down there. What Christ was doing in his incarnation as Jesus was here to offer a hand to help us consciously lift ourselves up to his level. And what that meant was that just understanding that the principles of forgiveness, empathy, compassion, and the fact that you are the creator of your reality and you have a direct connection in your heart to spirit, to interact with spirit in the sense of prayer so that you can shape the world around you and help uplift your whole community. Like, that's what Christ was teaching. And so if I meet somebody who calls themselves a Christian that doesn't live that way, then, we're not on the same path. And I don't feel like communicating with those people anymore. All right, I'm seeing some comments. Let's see. Johnny the Gee says, thoughts on reptilians, elite ETs, underground bases, beliefs on them, and reasoning for why they are to be. And I think somebody responded to him. Talon says, there a Western philosophy that you got deep into? And Courtney says, Johnny, I wanted to ask the same thing, basically. For some reason, I keep seeing adrenochrome. It's so dark, I don't know why I keep seeing it. All right, so I'll talk about that stuff first, and then Talon, I'll come back to your thing about Western philosophy. Okay, well, first of all, reptilians, elite ETs, underground bases, all of this stuff. It's a deep, deep subject. And my thoughts on it are that we're learning now, we're finally seeing now that darkness exists. Darkness has always existed. And these type of beings, whatever we want to call them, are expressions of the dark, and they are here in the universe. So we shouldn't be afraid of them. We shouldn't deny that that stuff exists. What we should be aware of as we're learning about them is that they have no power over the light. So to summarize all of these beings, I'm a concerned 20-year-old. Yeah, cool. Well, check this out, Johnny. I think this is going to help you. I was talking about this with a friend the other day, and this is how we ended up processing it. So there's all of this darkness that we're becoming aware of, right? Like, let's just say that all of that stuff is 100% true, that there are reptilian beings and interdimensional fucked up beings that just are here to enslave humanity. If all of that stuff is true, all of those beings are expressions of darkness, They are expressions of the lower vibrational state that we all have the choice to either align with or to align with a higher principle. So here's the main tool that the darkness uses to manipulate you. Are you ready? Are you paying attention? The main tool that the darkness uses to manipulate you is to convince you to forget that you are a being of light. Because light always wins over darkness, always. If you're in a completely dark room and you strike just one little tiny match, that light fills the entire room and the darkness is immediately gone. And that's a metaphor, but this plays out in the real world where if you are around darkness, or if you're becoming aware of these dark beings, the question might be, how do I transmute that? How do I overcome that? How do I change that? Well, you change it by remembering who you are. And you, old soul, are a being of light. You have more power than any of those entities and all of those entities combined. You have more power because your power comes from a higher order, a higher vibration. So you don't need to fight darkness because that's part of the illusion. In fact, fighting is how you get into a vibration of darkness yourself. You must only align yourself with light. And that is, I'm still speaking in metaphor, but the reality of aligning yourself with light means that you choose peace, love, positivity, compassion, empathy. You stand for justice. You become a warrior for truth. You do not become docile, but you also become effective. You are not weak, you are strong. And by aligning yourself with those principles, that's what I mean when I say aligning yourself with the light. So the darkness is always trying to get you to forget that you are a light being. Because when you forget that you're a light being and your vibration goes down and now you're in the realm of darkness, well, guess who controls the realm of darkness? The devil himself, the archons, the evil entities that we brought up, the reptilians, all of those people, they run the realm of darkness. They are the kings and the masters of the realms of darkness. But you don't have to be there. That's the point, because you live in a free will universe. The moment that you choose to align yourself with the expressions of light, all forms of darkness have lost their power over you. They cannot compete, and in fact, they will run from you. Another way that I said it in this previous conversation is that a being of light is equivalent to a terrorist from the perspective of the darkness. The darkness perceives a being of light as a terrorist. Why? Because they will end and destroy everything that they hold dear. So you are actually a powerful being that the darkness itself is very much afraid of. So let's take a breath. With all of that being said, yes, there are very powerful beings of darkness that have affected humanity, but they do not run humanity, they influence humanity. That's the number one distinction I want you to know, is they do not run humanity, they influence humanity. They influence humanity to forget that they are beings of light, because when they forget that, they lower their vibration out of their own free will, and then they become part of this darkness system that is now run and operated by these beings of darkness. And you will have no power if you fall into the system of darkness. The way that you have power is by remembering through your free will that you can choose to align with the light and the light principles. So I hope that that answers your question. Thank you for that question, because it's something that I love talking about, because it's a very easy thing to get yourself out of these negative spaces. And because we're human, sometimes we kind of are in it and then we come out and then we fall back into it and then we come out. That's okay. Show yourself compassion. That's okay. The important thing is to never feel like you've fully lost, because you are always in your now moment, and every single now moment is a new opportunity to choose to align yourself with the light. There is never a permanent loss of light, okay? So, Let's see, I had a few more comments. Um, No Problem says, I'm pretty sure I live near this darkness. This is why I try not to fear, but they tried to recruit me. I'm a magnet for this, like a moth to a light, no fear. Okay, there's some stuff that I want to break down in what you said. If you live next to this darkness, if you are in close proximity to this darkness, see it as an opportunity for, like, this is your battlefield. This is your work, that you get to bring light into these dark spaces. Under no circumstances should you be afraid of this darkness, whatever that means, whatever you're actually talking about. You should not be afraid of them because you are more powerful. And the light that you have to offer will transmute and transform all forms of darkness that you come in touch with. And that is your role here as an old soul, is to transmute this darkness. So do not be afraid of it, because again, if you're afraid of it, that lowers your vibration into the realm of the dark, and then you will be manipulated. If you stand true, which, remember, courage is what you choose to do in the face of fear. So you might be terrified of the darkness, but if you have 1 ounce of courage, then that means that you're moving forward beyond that fear. That is what it means to be a warrior, especially a spiritual warrior. You are now choosing to move beyond this fear through courage, and know internally that your light is more powerful than any form of darkness that could possibly surround you. And that is probably why you're there, is because all of us old souls are here on the planet to transform this place, which means getting our hands dirty, approaching darkness head on, and showing it the light and transforming it into something else. So you should never put yourself in actually dangerous, risky situations. But when it just comes to this generic conversation about the mechanisms of light and dark, do not fear the darkness. When you align yourself with light, you are more powerful than you could possibly imagine. Okay? More comments. Courtney says, this is amazing. I love this. The darkness fears the light. 100%. They can't stand it. They can't be around it. In the same way that darkness in a room cannot be around a newly lit match. It might be small, but darkness can't even be in its presence. It is like nails on a chalkboard to darkness. It will run away from you. Johnny says, I heard when you pass and you enter the spirit world of wandering souls, you stand out to all dark beings because of your light, to which they become scared of you. But when you fear them, they will take it. Yeah, I mean, again, nobody can take your light from you. You give it away, or you hide it. Let's think about it this way. Let's think about it through an analogy, all right? Let's get into a metaphor. So the metaphor is, I want you to imagine that there's an open section of a forest. There's all of this grass and everything around, and it goes out quite a ways around a campfire. A campfire is the center of this imaginal space, okay? And there's a campfire burning, and it's illuminating all of this space directly around the campfire. And eventually that light kind of dissipates and dies off, and now there's darkness, and then there's all of these trees that surround this place, okay? So now darkness exists out beyond where the light is. If the fire in this metaphor is a big ass bonfire, is fucking huge, then the darkness can't come that close. It can only come maybe 50 feet away, let's just say that. But then if the light starts to diminish, then the darkness comes closer. And if the campfire ever fully goes out, then the darkness is right there in the space that the campfire once was. But now here's the spiritual mechanism. The darkness cannot change the state of that fire whatsoever. Only you can change the state of that fire. And also, if your light has gone out, only you can turn it back on, and you can turn it on just like that. There's no, you never lose that spark. So the darkness cannot take light from you. That cannot happen. Only you can hide your light or diminish your light, which allows the darkness to come closer. And sure, maybe they're standing away from you shouting all of these negative things and fucked up things for you to think about so that you naturally diminish your light. But it's important to remember that only you have diminished your light, okay? So darkness has no power over light. Never has, never will, cannot happen. You are in control of the amount of light that you have. And if you are an old soul, trust me when I say you are way more powerful than you could possibly imagine. The light that you hold is hundreds or thousands of lifetimes or years old and is powerful. The light that the old soul has is larger than a bonfire. It is an intense light energy. But see, the old soul is also plagued with self-doubt because we've gone through so many lifetimes where we have been persecuted for holding this light, or we have been misunderstood or ostracized from our families or our societies for simply aligning with light because the darkness was so afraid of us. But as an old soul, now is the time. The planet is ready for your light. So shine it and shine it bright, and don't worry about the darkness. It's going to take care of itself. A couple more comments here. Let's see. Tan's Dreamer says, what is truth? How do we know we are awake to the truth of our soul? And if we are not our thoughts and feelings, then what essentially are we? Man, great question. Lots to unpack there. First of all, what are we? Well, we are clearly spirit. We are clearly awareness. When you go through the meditation process of trying to go back to your real center, who actually are you? Let's do it this way. When I look at my hand, am I my hand? Kind of, but not necessarily, because I am looking at it. So what is that I that is looking at it? Okay, is it my eyeballs? Is it my eyeballs looking at it? No, it's got to be deeper than that. Is it my eyeballs have communicated to somewhere in my brain? So I am my brain looking at my hand. No, not necessarily. The soul deep within, and the yoga word for that would just be awareness, or as Johnny just commented, consciousness. Consciousness or awareness is the fundamental reality of who and what you are. So again, this whole idea of past lifetimes and how after death you will have another expression, that stands up in this conversation because your awareness will always be aware of something. So you will always move forward and have more and more things to be aware of. You live in an infinite universe. Awareness will always be aware of something, but you are the awareness and not the thing that you are aware of. That is the expression that you are perceiving, but you are the awareness. Okay, so you are awareness, you are truth, or you are consciousness. So then what is truth? I like to express truth like this. So truth is basically aligning with nature as it is actually perceived and not how your ego tries to twist it and tries to make it into a story out of mental manipulation. Okay? So truth would be that, let's do it like this. Let's say I slap myself in the face, right? Right? Obviously, I'm not going to hit myself hard. But if I slap myself in the face, and then I say to you, I did not slap myself in the face, that is obviously not true. It's not true because your awareness and my awareness both saw and witnessed it happening. So the only truth of that scenario that just happened was that I did slap myself in the face. And so this is what I believe it means to actually live in alignment with truth. And the connotations of that is that when you don't live in alignment with that type of truth, you will experience incredibly, you just invite in all kinds of fucked up things into your reality because now you're living in lies, and lies maintain all of this negative energy to maintain them, and it exhausts you. And so when you live in truth, Jesus said the truth will set you free, because truth does not actually require your belief in it or your, let's say it this way, lies require way more energy of maintenance than truth does. Truth is effortless because in reality, it's only the human mind that could deny truth. Truth can't be denied in the world. If a boulder falls into a lake and then I say that it didn't happen, the boulder's still in the lake. Truth doesn't give a shit about what I have to say about what happened. The boulder fell in the lake. It's at the bottom of the lake, okay? It doesn't matter it actually doesn't matter if I say it happened or say it didn't happen. The truth is, it's there. So living in alignment with truth is just simply not getting caught up in these mental stories and manipulations and lies, trying to force reality to bend to the story that we would like to tell. I hope that makes sense. I think I'm going to leave it there. Oh, what's up, Jared Noland? I see you there in the comment section. Let's see what you got to say. I'm loving this, man. You are putting words to feelings I've always felt, but have had a hard time finding kindred spirits to unpack it outside the rigidity and limited terminology of modern religion. Yes, I hear you, bro. And thank you for coming into the live stream and leaving a comment. Yeah, man, I'll talk directly to you for a moment. My journey has really challenged me a lot. You specifically know what my past is like, and we shared our past together for a period of time. And after my dad came out of the closet and the church had its big reaction, it challenged me directly to ask all these questions about what do I actually think about spirit and what do I actually think about my role with spirit. I want to share just the main thing that shifted for me on my journey. And that was the central idea that Christianity puts forward, which I believe is completely unfounded, is that we are born in sin. In other words, that we are born fucked up and that we are born needing to beg and plead that God accept us back into his love and his grace. That is so twisted and so upside down in my perspective at this point in my journey. My old soul has always known better than that. And especially now at this phase in my life, my old soul embraces that. I now express life to be this way. When you are born perfect. You are divinity that is chosen to come into a human body, okay? You are born as a perfect expression of divinity. Could you possibly imagine being a mother or father and looking at the baby that you just gave birth to and saying, this thing is fucked up and it needs to earn my love or else I'm gonna torture it for the rest of its life? Really? So if a parent wouldn't do that to a child, do you think that God would do that to his creation? Hell no. You see, the only battle that we're fighting spiritually is the battle between our own darkness, the negativity that is in us that comes out in what we call in psychology the ego. That is what we're battling, because if we can step outside of our own darkness, our own desire to dominate, judge, and harm other people for the betterment of our lives, if we can step out of that part of ourselves, what is left? The only thing that is left is the principles of light, love, truth, happiness, joy, peace, abundance, prosperity, health, wealth. I could go on and on. All of that is what is left over when you step outside of your ego. And so the church, to me, has a really hard time stepping out of its own ego because it thinks that it is the, how do I say it? It's the representation of God's voice. If the church didn't say it, then God didn't say it. And nope, not true. My old soul knows God speaks directly to my heart, and I will always listen to the still small voice that is within my own heart as the guidance for my life before any man or any woman, any organization, any pope, any president, any preacher, because that is the message of Jesus. The message of Jesus was that God is within you and you are God. You are merged. You are not the ego idea of God, but you are divinity itself. merged into a human form, and you must remember that. And as soon as you live in alignment with that, miracles happen. I could keep going. Let's get back to some of these comments. Let's see. Yep, I'm seeing a lot of resonation with what I was just saying out there. Let's see. No Problem says, thoughts on Freemasons. This is the dark I was talking about. I live in a secluded forest. They did immediately run from me. I sensed it immediately. Yeah, I think we've already answered it. I think we've already discussed it because it's the same principle. If you feel darkness within you, and I don't mean within you, I mean if you're in the presence of somebody and inside your heart center you can feel darkness, all you must do is command in light into your space and watch what happens in the real world, because it is shocking the results I've had from what I just said when I've been out on tour. I'd love to give you one small example. I gave this example in my last live stream, which was I was out on tour. I was with Miguel. We were over in Europe somewhere. I forget which city exactly. And we got invited by some friends in that local area to go to their studio. And when we got there, one of the guys had a really dark vibe. He invited us into this other room in the studio to listen to one of his songs. And so myself and the bass player from the band went with that guy to his studio and started listening to one of his songs. And I just felt more and more uncomfortable, more and more awareness of the dark vibes that this guy was putting out. And as we were in this studio, he started playing his song, and the lyrics that were coming through his music were so dark and messed up that within a matter of a few lines, I wanted out. I didn't want to listen to the rest of the song. I didn't want it hitting me anywhere in my consciousness or subconsciousness. I was like, no, I didn't want it. So I immediately started praying. I prayed within, and I reached out to Spirit, and I said, Spirit, I want out of this room, and I want out of this room now, okay? I want out of here now. And as soon as I actually mentally formed the word now, my bass player friend who was sitting in the room with us, he accidentally dropped his cell phone, and his cell phone landed on the ground, and it broke his screen, and that abrupt chaos got the guy to pause his music, and so he stopped his music, and I was immediately aware that this was an answer to my prayer. I stood up and I walked out of the room because I didn't want to be in that room anymore, and I didn't want to be around this dark energy, and I wanted a way out. So I prayed for a way out of the room, and next thing you know, my friend accidentally drops his phone. Now I am not saying that him breaking his phone was an answer to my prayer, but the disruption of that moment actually got the music to stop and gave me the ability to walk out of that room. And so that's an example about when you command light into your space, the universe responds, and it responds immediately. So there is no need to be afraid of any of all of that stuff, okay? All you must do is remember that you're connected. And then when you know that you're connected, you then ask for what it is that you want. And you don't ask in the sense of a plea or a beg or coming from any sort of lack mentality. It's more like a command, but it is not an ego-based command. It is a heart-based owning of what it is that you want. I command light into my space now because I do not want darkness here. I command darkness to leave, and I replace it with light, and I replace it immediately. I replace it now. And when you pray a prayer like that, I'm telling you, just watch. Stuff changes faster than you could have ever imagined it would. Let's get back to a few of these comments, and I think we're almost wrapping up. So if there's anything on your guys' mind that you haven't expressed and want me to talk about, do it now, because I think we're going to start wrapping up soon. Let's see. Courtney says, you're so connected with your higher self. Johnny says, any more examples to gain clear insight? More examples on what? I don't remember what subject we were talking about when you and I were talking. So Courtney says, you're so connected to your higher self. Yes, your higher self is really, it's so much larger than your human experience, okay? Your human self is a distillation of your soul. Your soul's wisdom, especially if you're watching this and if you're an old soul, you'll know what I'm talking about. Your soul's wisdom is thousands of years old, and the knowledge that you have within your soul is immense. Your human ego, your human mind, does not have the same level of wisdom. And so you can access your higher self's wisdom and guidance just by simply getting out of your ego and by recognizing that there is a part of you that has this innate knowledge, and you're commanding that part of you to come forward. And so it's kind of a getting out of the way. It feels like a stepping out of my own way every time I'm in that space. It's a surrendering. It's a surrendering of control, because Spirit is in control. I'm not in control. I do not have control over what happens in my life. The only thing I have control of is my inner state and how I respond to what happens in my life and what I do with my time and with my actions. But I do not have control over life. Only Spirit has control over life. But when you align yourself with that force, you will then see how you will experience things that are beyond your wildest dreams, because Spirit knows all of your heart's desires. It knows how to take you from point A to point B, where you will experience a synchronicity or an accomplishing of your goal. Spirit knows how to do that. My human ego doesn't. So I must surrender my human ego, which is full of trying to force situations to take place, but also it's kind of this feeling of helplessness. It's like this disempowered feeling. I'm surrendering that. I'm trying to say worries. If I'm worried about something, then I also surrender that. Because you must surrender your worries and your control so that you kind of become this open vessel. It's almost like a cup ready to be filled with Spirit. If the cup is already full of worries and manipulation and trying to control reality, then Spirit can't pour anything into that cup. So you must empty out your cup, empty out your worries, empty out your ego control of how you think you're going to get something. And then Spirit will pour into you. And that is what we call miracles, because it comes from beyond where you thought it could come from. And it just appears. And when it appears, it is more perfect than you could have ever imagined. So miracles are out there, guys. You got to just learn how to surrender, open up to them, and remember that you are here to live in alignment with Spirit. And that by doing that, you will transform this world, because people have forgotten that. This is where I'm going to wrap it up, okay? Well, before I wrap it up, let me make sure I didn't miss a comment. Thank you for your time. I rarely comment on any social media, but feel aligned with the truth you share. Thank you for your comments as well. Courtney says, just pure gratefulness for me. Thank you all so much. You're an amazing being of light, OnenO. Thank you, Courtney. I appreciate you coming through. Yep, miracles can happen. Surrender to the flow. Absolutely. Okay, so this is where we're going to wrap it up. I want to remind you of your power as an old soul. That's why I started this live stream in the first place. The Great Awakening is upon us, and the old soul most likely feels out on the sidelines of what's going on, because the old soul doesn't care to get caught up in the emotional games, the drama games. It knows better than to get caught up in a racial war or in any of these conversations that are becoming incredibly popular. So then the old soul kind of becomes a hermit and pulls off to the sidelines because it doesn't like what it's seeing on the playing field. So there's two things. You must first remember that you do not have to participate with things that are not of this higher vibration. It doesn't matter the amount of social pressure that comes from the people playing this game. If you as an old soul feel in your heart that playing that game is a waste of time, you must honor that. That there is truth and wisdom in there, and that spirit is nudging you in that direction. And only spirit knows what is best for you. It is not the social media mob. It is not even your family or your friends or the people that you encounter when you see the world. The only voice you should ever be listening to, and especially during this great awakening, is the still small voice right in the middle of your heart. And if you can learn how to hear it throughout all moments of your day, that is the best way to go about it. But if you need to, spend time in meditation so that you can consciously call that inner guidance forward. Ask it to guide you. Ask it to guide you in everything you think, say, do, and act in the world. Ask spirit to guide you, because it will, and it will be more powerful and more beneficial than anything that your human ego could do. We're watching the world get caught up in ego games, okay? Some of these ego games appear to be justified, but all of them are ego games. Spirit is beyond ego games. So I do not feel called. Let me call one out that has actually been weighing on my heart. As all of this racial injustice has become the popular thing to talk about, I've been watching friend after friend after friend say sentences on social media like they are embarrassed of their skin color being a white person. They apologize for their white privilege and all of that stuff. If you're an old soul, you know exactly that this is a waste of time and energy to do things like that, because that is a surface level thing that doesn't even apply to the individual. I am not ashamed to be who I am. And you know why? Because I live in alignment with love. That's why I'm not ashamed. If I was an asshole, then there'd be a different conversation. But I know me, and I know my heart, and spirit knows me, and spirit is the only one that I am attempting to live in alignment with. So I do not apologize for me being who I am, because I know who I am and my real spirit identity. And all of these ego games are becoming the popular thing to get involved with, but they are not. And I invite you to go into the still small space of your heart and consult that space for your guidance. That is the space that will help give you words to help actually heal the people that you care about. That is the space that will give you guidance on actions that you can take in your life to actually benefit your life and the community around you. Do not get caught up in these games. Your old soul knows better. So go into that space, all right? That's where I'm going to end it today. Wow, long live stream. Thank you guys for sticking with it. I can't believe I had so many people engaging and coming along this journey with me. It really brightened up my energy and my spirits. So thank you for being here with me. Let's read these last few comments. No Problem says, we are just spiritual beings having a human experience. I have a small child, so it's hard not to put him number one. But I feel New Earth is here and birth is painful. Yeah, but you do have to put that child number one. That child is an extension of spirit, and you are the guardian of that child. So do not be ashamed of that, and do not think that that is something that is unimportant. Of course, that's the most important thing you should be doing. Shaping the next spiritual warrior for the generation after you is one of the most beautiful things you could do. And if anything, all of your attention should be on pumping that child full of all the love and adoration that you can, because that will grow in that little soul to make them way more powerful than you could ever imagine. So that's great. I'm super happy for you. I'm going to end the live stream there, guys. I'll do this again in the next few days, so if you want to make sure you get a notification, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so that way when I go live, you'll get the notification. But thank you again for for making this a conversation. That's what I want these live streams to be. I want them to be a conversation. So if you ever see me live and you want to talk, come on in, leave me a comment, and I'll talk to you. And last thing I'll say is check out my channel. I got a lot of videos. If you haven't seen everything, I talk about a bunch of different subjects. There's guided meditation experiences and much more stuff. And yeah, so anyways, I hope you have a beautiful day. Thank you for tuning in. Until I see you again along your journey, oneness in sound, I am OnenO. Peace.